St. John's. Yeah, let's start there in the East. They are a
Yep.
5 seed. Kind of surprising for the Big East champion, back-to-back
Yeah.
seasons. Obviously, they lost first weekend last year to Arkansas and Calipari, who are also pretty hot right now. We'll get into that later. But the East region, full of names that you've seen before, Davis. We can, get into each matchup in a second. But we have Duke, we have St. John's, we have Kansas, Michigan State, UCLA, UConn, all with legendary coaches too. Hurley,
Yep.
Cronin, Calipari. Bill Self, Shire's earning his way into that as well. Like, this is going to be a really, really fun region.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that literally Duke, you can't. When's the last time March Madness happened and Duke and Michigan State weren't playing in the Elite Eight? I feel like it happens all the time. They're always on the same side of the bracket. And you have UConn too. So it's interesting how they handled maneuvering around Duke, where they were going to be placed as the 1 seed, what region, because they're basically getting the second best 2 seed and probably the best 3 seed, which kind of like boned them a little bit, to be honest. And let's not forget that they're getting the Big East champ also in St. John's. They decided to keep UConn and St. John's in the same region. This is a loaded region here. And honestly, I kind of feel bad for Duke, who's probably coming in, I would assume, potentially as the number 1 seed.
They're the number one overall
team.
Yep.
It's interesting how they maneuvered getting to what teams were going to be in Duke's specific region. This is going to be a gauntlet.
It really will. And Duke, like you said, it's going to be tough for them. And only, they're a great team. They got a, number 1 overall bracket, all that stuff. But they do have Ohio State and TCU possibly as that next matchup. And Ohio State is not a slouch team, Davis. They played pretty well in the Big Ten tournament whatever you want to call it. They lost to Michigan, but they played Michigan pretty hard. Michigan, like people said, all tournament, at least for the conference tournament, hadn't really been tested most of the year. Ohio State took them to the brink, and they were only 21-12. Like, pretty big. Yeah. TCU also, they're a really good team, played in the gauntlet of a Big 12. So Duke will not have a sleeping walk to the Sweet 16, and maybe facing St. John's, maybe Kansas, who knows. They're also missing a couple players. But what do you think of St. John's? Because I know how I feel about St. John's, but what do you think about them?
I think they're legit, to be completely honest with you. Obviously they have Bryce Hopkins over on their team, and they won the Big East pretty handedly, beating UConn in that championship game. They don't have any, in this loaded draft class, they don't have anybody who's going to go top 10 probably, but they have a team of guys under Rick Pitino who, every year they can make a run. So they obviously made a run last year, making it all the way to the Elite Eight. I don't think, because all ones made the Final Four.
Exactly.
But they made it to the Elite Eight. And again, I think that they're a team to absolutely watch out for. And probably, I haven't done a bracket yet. We can even
me neither.
My bracket. We can do our bracket or my bracket on this live, but I'd probably have them going into the second weekend, I assume.
I agree. And I don't want to
I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry, because they'd run into Duke.
They probably run into Duke,
but in the second weekend. So, but they would. I think they would make weekend number 2, probably beating Kansas in that round of 32.
I think so as well, and only because last year the whole thing was St. John's couldn't shoot, and they're still not the best shooting team right now either. But they have matured a lot. They brought in a lot of guys that can make a bucket when they need it, and I'm gonna butcher his name, is Zubi Eljafor, I believe, the center. Had triple doubles this year, which you think happens a lot in college basketball, but it's really not. It is a rarity, especially when a big man gets a triple double. So this team is very good, and honestly, I think Pitino is the X factor. I know that's kind of a lazy take, but this is a guy that's been here before. This is a guy that has experienced some rough, moments in the tournament, especially, last year, like we've already talked about. But this is a moment where he can put himself in the spotlight, beat Northern Iowa like he's supposed to, then beat Kansas, who, say what you want about Kansas and where they're at right now, but that's a good team. And beating them, who took Houston to the limit this weekend, I think that's huge. So let's kind of jump around a little bit more. Look at Louisville, Michigan State, the bottom half of the bracket. What do you think of that? Because I think UConn probably beat Furman. You never want to say anything actually now, because 15 seeds have been pretty hot recently. But what are we thinking here? I really don't know.
Yeah. First looks at this. I'm going to be honest with you, Ethan. And with a guy sitting right here with UConn futures to win the whole thing, I think Michigan State's very live to make it to the Elite Eight and play Duke. I mean, this Louisville team was banged up in the ACC championship without Mikael Brown, but he should be back, I think. I think both these teams probably get through, and I need to do a little bit more research on South Florida. I wouldn't be shocked though if Louisville hands it to them. They scave out of there without a big upset. But we're seeing a possible second round matchup of Louisville against Michigan State, and I think this Michigan State team, Tom Izzo in March, is just different, man. And I think that he can get to the second weekend, and I think he can absolutely take on UConn and that Danny Hurley team, who's we've seen ups and downs, man, for them.
Yeah,
like the whole year. We saw that Creighton loss earlier this year. And then obviously they just got smoked in the Big East tournament. Some people might look at, go on the other side of the coin, half glass full, and say, that loss was necessary in the Big East championship. Every good team needs a good loss at the end of the year to really dial things back and understand where they're at.
Yeah.
But
it's a lot of sports. Yeah.
I mean, I think that could be that Michigan State UConn game, if that does come to fruition, that second weekend. I think that could be potentially game of the bracket.
I agree. That would be awesome. But just looking at another first round matchup, UCLA and UCF. I watched a little bit of the UCLA Purdue game yesterday, and honestly, Davis, I think they played Purdue harder than Michigan did today. Michigan kind of got crushed. We could talk about them in a second when we get to their side of the bracket, but UCLA was really impressive. They don't really have a guy. I know Donovan Dent has been really good for them this year. He's been a big scorer, but they have a lot of guys that are big and can, play the glass, that can play defense, that can get a bucket. But what is UCF like? Do you know? Because I want to talk well about UCLA, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself.
Yeah, I think they're just your classic middle of the road Big 12 team. They just had a tremendously difficult schedule, and they beat Kansas this year. They lost to Vanderbilt in basically the preseason. They played Arizona hard at home, lost by 7 on the 17th of January. Beat Texas Tech in late January. I don't know. This is a team, when you start getting this low in conference standings, in my opinion, this is where I'd rather take the team in UCLA, at least round one, who has at least showed a little bit of fight. You know what I mean?
Agree.
This team hasn't really shown fight all year.
Yeah.
Can I be honest? I mean, this team, UCF, they just lost by 22 points to Arizona in the Big 12 championship. In their first round, like in Arizona's first round. So I don't know. I don't see. I mean, you could say upset as in, a 10 seed winning over a 7 seed, but
sure,
I don't really think that on my side. I'm not taking a team that played 500 in conference like almost ever. They just haven't shown anything to show me that they can hang with the UCLA team that just took Purdue, to the wire and made a nice little run and beat Michigan State in the Big East and the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like UCF, after what you just said, is like they kind of got in because their conference bid and their conference name and all that good stuff. So I'm not really sure who to pick there. I really do think UCLA and UConn could be an awesome second round matchup. And like you said, UConn has been weird, had some tough losses, had some awesome wins too. So I don't know how to really think here. So what are your overall feelings on the East region before we make picks or anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like this has to be Duke or nothing. It sounds crazy to say,
really,
with Michigan State and UConn down at the bottom, but if you're even getting a Duke St. John's or Duke Kansas game in that first round of the second weekend in the Sweet 16, I still think that they're going to beat whoever they play there and move on to an Elite Eight where they're going to play a battered team. Like they're going to play a team who just came off a huge win, whether it be UConn over Michigan State over UConn, throw UCLA in there, even Louisville in there.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely am going to have Duke running into my Final Four. And I'm not seeing odds just yet on my side with regions odds, but I would put Duke in there, and obviously that's the chalky play, but I wouldn't be shocked if they are like minus 130 to get through.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you about Duke and if it's them or bust, because they have one of the highest net ratings for a Duke team in school history. And this is including some all-time 90s teams. This is including the team that was awesome last year. So I agree, but let's just look at a little bit of the upset size on this bracket, this region. Is a South Florida a team that's a sleeper here? Because they've been really good this year. They have, kind of taken the American as theirs now that some of the teams left and all that good stuff. Beat Wichita State today in the conference championship. So, what do you think of South Florida or any other, lower seeds?
Upset wise, honestly, I need to do a little bit more research on California Baptist because they just came off an electric game-winning block or missed
That's the
dunk,
one I
whatever
was
you
going
want
to
to call
say.
it.
Yeah.
Last night, they've got a guy on their team, Dominic Daniels, who gets 23 points a game. I mean, obviously, you're going up against Darren Peterson.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was going to say.
On the other side of these types of teams who, hey, they can. A team like this who just came off an electric run in their conference tournament to get through, and now they're dancing against a Kansas team who, again, like I kind of said, not that they're middle of the Big 12, they are obviously in the upper echelon, but that's still fourth, fifth. They struggled on their schedule. Their schedule's filled with good losses and good wins, but a lot of good losses.
Okay.
That's one I would want to do a little bit more research on.
No, I like the vibes there, though, especially because Darren Peterson and Kansas have been so many different versions of itself this year. And they haven't played the same 5, the same 6 to 7 every single game.
Yep, absolutely. We've got
Furman
Furman to the Final Four.
I kind of like it. Furman did surprise whoever it was last time they were in, right? Who was it?
Yeah, they beat Virginia 3 years ago on a buzzer beater.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that could happen again. That could happen again. North Dakota State, I feel like they've been in it recently too. Aren't they like the Jackrabbits? Right?
Yeah. Yes, they are. Yep.
Yeah. I feel like they've been in it. So I want to pick Michigan State too, but let's not get it too ahead of ourselves yet. It is only Sunday night, and we'll get back before Thursday probably to talk about the brackets and stuff more. But this is just an early preview. I'm not sure what else really jumps out to me. I know Northern Iowa has been pretty frisky in the past, but I do like St. John's, like we talked about. I really think St. John's them and Kansas would be a fun matchup, but them and Duke would be really fun. I do think St. John's could make it out of this bracket, and this is coming from a Big East guy, so I don't know. This is just something that we're gonna have to see because I think it might be Duke or bust.
And I actually have DraftKings. FanDuel doesn't even have it up yet. We beat the books on talking about this stuff.
Okay.
Duke minus 135. Absolutely correct. I can't believe I actually nailed that right on the number. Yeah, here are the region numbers. So we've got UConn at 6-1, Michigan State 7-1, and the Johnnies 9-1. Amir, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, Furman 800-1. I like it.
Oh my god, that would be insane. I mean,
what's the thing Kevin says in the office? If you see something 10,000-1, you have to bet it no matter what.
Yeah, you do.
We're getting close to that number.
Pay off your mortgage with that winning. Come on.
Yes, agreed.
I mean,
agreed.
The Johnnies have a good odds to possibly win that region too. Could be very interesting. A lot of the blue bloods of college basketball, recent and past lore, are in there.